After that, we got American Aquarium with their surprise 90s tribute album, Slappers, Bangers, and Certified Twangers. Should've been a cowboy. Should've learned to roll. American Aquarium, one of my absolute favorite bands. I always say it that I think BJ Barham is one of the songwriters of this generation of country music. I feel like he never gets the attention he deserves, but they kind of made this collection of 90s hits that somehow aren't the legends, that aren't like the Friends in Low Places level 90s hits. Songs like Queen of My Double Wide Trailer and Lost and Found by Brooks and Dunn and like Wild One by Faith Hill. And this album is, again, I would use the word charming. It's just a ton of fun. And it's cool to hear one of my favorite bands just have fun in the studio and make an album like this. I don't know that any of the songs on here are better than the original versions, which is a critique that American Aquarium actually addressed on Twitter, which I found hilarious. But I do think some of them work better than others. My favorite overall is She's in Love with the Boy, which was originally by Trisha Yearwood. Katie looks at Tommy like I still look at you. She's in love with the boy. What I think really works about this song is that BJ Barham has a somewhat angry delivery style by nature. And given that the tension of this song rests in this disapproving father that says, you know, this guy ain't worth a lick, and when it comes to brains, he's got the short end of the stick, and the daughter is kind of rebelling against him because she's in love with the boy, and then the big climax of the song is the mother kind of telling off the father. I think that kind of grit in his voice and that little bit of an angry delivery sells the song in a way that made it feel super fresh to me. I also think that same conviction that BJ Barham sings with really works on a song like Should Have Been a Cowboy, which is about longing for this life where you're roping and riding, and that totally fits with this kind of American Aquarium narrative of hard work and wanting to go out to Oklahoma and value that hard work. I also think a project like this is just a great idea because now they got this little extra catalog of songs that they can throw into their live show, and maybe in between somber moments like One Day at a Time and 6 Years Come September, it would be nice to lighten the mood with a rendition of, I don't know, John Deere Green or something like that. This album was just a really fun time and something a little unexpected from American Aquarium. I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10, but there's kind of not a point in rating it. Kat Hasty finished out her Drowning in Dreams trilogy with Drowning in Dreams Part 3. I came around, showed you love ain't a crime, and you turned your back and I didn't know why. If you're not on the Kat Hasty bandwagon yet, I feel like it's officially time to get on board. I think to me it is so clear that Pretty Things was not just a fluke random viral hit, but that Kat Hasty really has an honest perspective as a songwriter and her own kind of stark vocal delivery style that makes her a force to be reckoned with. In this final little collection of 3 songs, which are still super spare, acoustic, lo-fi, that is a theme of a lot of the music that has been coming out recently, she's getting really reflective about some of her inner demons. She says there's a devil in us all. And she's also really thinking about parental relationships. There's a track on here called Dear Mama. I bet you can guess who that is written to. And on another track on here, she is kind of speaking to a guy and saying that you don't have to be your parents. The way that we love each other doesn't have to just perpetuate cycles from our parents that we don't want to perpetuate. And that one, which is called What Our Parents Taught Us, is absolutely my favorite track of these 3. Because on the one hand, it's going to this very dark, vulnerable place where she is telling this guy that she sees kind of this pain that he wrestles with and that he has in his past, and she wants to show him that love will never hurt you. And you get this release in the chorus that just feels hopeful, and that juxtaposition of kind of the sort of sad pain with like the hope and the love and the healing, it really makes the song work to me. I don't really know if I'm supposed to think of this as one cohesive album, these 3 little 3-song EPs, but if so, it's this kind of amazingly humble but audacious and acoustic but really resonant thing that she's put out, and I'm just so pumped to see where she goes from here. Another person I'm keeping a close eye on is Charlie Marie, who just released her debut full-length album, Ramble On. He left me in a lone star state. This is a cool album. You know, I didn't listen to Charlie Marie back when she had whatever that album is that's like blue. Is it called Rhinestones? I don't know, but for whatever reason, you know, I just felt like she was getting talked about in all these media places, but I didn't really feel like much passion from listeners for her, and so I just kind of ignored it. But this time around, that was different. A lot of people that are just sort of regular musical listeners were hitting me up in the DM saying, hey, you should listen to Charlie Marie, and I trust that. And so I leaned in and listened to her, and man, she's cool. She's cool, cool, cool. Like, the obvious country comparison for her voice would be Patsy Cline, but I would almost say like a Western version of Patsy Cline, like Patsy Cline, but with some cacti and desert in the background. But at various moments on listening to Ramble On, I would also compare her voice to Florence Welch, to Shakira a little bit. She's got that like, oh, like kind of like some of her R's do that little, like I say this with love, but like this little like Kermity kind of thing. I also thought Fiona Apple was a major comparison that I would make. At a different stage every night, and you grow old and you're tired. And as a writer, she has this funny mix of being very matter-of-fact, but also a woman scorned at the same time, which is compelling. The song Heard It Through the Red Wine, which is obviously playing off the idea of hearing something through the grapevine, is really smart, where she's basically saying that alcohol made this guy tell the truth, and a different lover's name escaped his lips. And she's like, thank God I heard it through the red wine. I heard where your heart is really at when you were drunk. On the song El Paso, this cowboy that she's with leaves her for a man, and she's like, look, you love who you love, that's not a crime, but a cheater is a cheater and your dirty laundry is on the line. One of my favorite songs in the album, and maybe my favorite vocal on the album, is a song called Tough Kitty, which I actually sent to my sister Kitty and said, hey, if a cowboy ever breaks your heart, like, this is your anthem. Because she sustains this one note where she says, what a pity, and then it kind of comes in with, I'm a tough kitty, and you get this awesome musical release. If you're a steel lover, you're gonna love the sound of this album. Pretty much every single song is not just featuring steel guitar, but loaded with steel guitar. And that gives that kind of woozy, sunsetty feel to a lot of these songs, because there is a soul element to this record. I mean, the opening track is called Soul Train. On 40 Miles from Memphis, you're gonna get some of that Memphis-y, Ameripolitan, more kind of soulful country vibe. But where the album's not super filled with steel, I think it feels a little more jangly, a little more saloon to me, and that's very much due to how much piano is on here. You get a bunch of piano on Tequila and Lime. That is very fun and jaunty. This record sounds expensive. It in a way reminds me of Jesse Daniels' Rollin' On. Maybe I'm just thinking that because it's called Ramble On, but I think they share some of that common Western feel. It did drag a little bit for me. I think I'd give it like a 7.3 overall, and I'm super intrigued to see what Charlie Marie does and if she ends up kind of catching on with audiences. I think if you're looking for someone new and different, someone your friends haven't heard of, maybe check out Charlie Marie, and she'll be the person in this video that's your cup of tea. Travis Tritt dropped a new album called Set in Stone. With all the music that's coming out, I've only had one solid listen through this record, so I don't feel super qualified to talk about this, at least at the level that I would hope to. But it's Travis Tritt's first album in over a decade, and I definitely hear him leaning into the idea that he is a legacy artist now. It is not quite as like grim and solemn as John Anderson's Years last year, but at the same time, Travis Tritt is definitely considering himself a little more of an elder statesman of the genre. Smoke in a Bar, which is the lead single and probably still my favorite song on the whole record, is kind of this nostalgia, yearning for a world where things were a little simpler and we actually got along and you could smoke in a bar. His feelings about the state of America are a little more explicitly on display in the song Ghost Town Nation, where he describes the civilized people, which I would assume are the people maybe in a more urban setting, are howling at the moon and preaching impending doom. And so he's gonna retreat back into the woods and, go fishing and spend some time in Ghost Town Nation, where life's just fine. And that song, I think, is pretty indicative of this sort of comfort in his own skin that runs through a lot of this album. On the song Set in Stone, which I think is like the catchiest melody that I heard. Set me up a plan for who I want to be. It's a Brent Cobb co-write, I noticed. And there's also Wyatt Durrett is on a lot of these tracks, who's famously written a lot of songs with Zach Brown and now Luke Combs. On Set in Stone, he says, like, my legacy is set in stone. You know, I cared for my family and I worked hard and did my best. But honestly, hearing someone that feels comfortable in their skin and with the legacy that they're leaving, I don't think it makes for the most interesting listening. By the end of the album, we get a couple songs like Open Line, which he is another one he co-wrote with Brent Cobb, where it's kind of his opus about all the ways in which he's sort of searching for meaning in life. And I think Open Line is a reference to, you know, a phone line being open and looking for sort of viable paths for himself spiritually. And like I kind of enjoyed hearing some of that intimacy, same as I felt on Ain't Who I Was. And while I think these are pretty interesting sentiments, this album just doesn't ever like smack me in the face in a way that really makes me pay that much attention. It's a Dave Cobb album, and it's got that sort of warm, vintagey feeling that a lot of Dave Cobb productions have, but you don't have a moment like Trouble where it's just so exciting and fun, and you don't necessarily have like the stark solemnity of songs that you want to have. It's just sort of solid throughout, and I think it could have used a little more dynamics. Still, I think it's really cool to have Travis Tritt back on the scene. I still really love Smoke in a Bar, and I think Set in Stone might be my other favorite one here. And Leave This World, which I didn't talk about, but that's pretty. It's just a sweet little love song about not wanting to leave this world without this girl. Okay, and now some super quick hits, because this video is going on for forever. Canaan Smith's High Country Sound.
I might have finally found something colder than you.
To me, this feels like a reinvention of Canaan Smith. He has officially stepped away from his former bro-y persona and has made a record that it feels like he really wants to make, that feels a lot more country. That is a theme going on with a lot of people right now, and I love to see it. Mason Jars and Fireflies almost reminds me of Ian Munsick's Mountain Time, in that it's kind of this over-the-top mixture of a really poppy production with really country elements. And there's a few of those moments on the record, but then there are some really kind of soulful country moments. Colder Than You, I think, is a really great song. Same with Sweet Virginia. You know, I love a Virginia shout out, but both of these are just really solid, beautiful songs, and I'm proud of the guy for following his muse and correcting course and making a record he wanted to make. Priscilla Block dropped a debut EP.
Guess I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. You must have heard
I've talked about Priscilla a number of times on the channel. I found her on TikTok, songs like Thick Thighs and PMS, and then Just About Over You, which ended up scoring her a deal, are what broke her out on that platform. This EP features Just About Over You, as well as a bunch of new songs, and I gotta say, I did not love this EP. I believe in Priscilla tremendously as a performer, and as a personality. She's so confident, and it's so infectious and fun to watch. But the themes on these songs felt a lot more generic than some of the stuff that I've heard from her before. To me, the sound of it is a little bit like, I would say, a female Jason Aldean, if you can imagine that. Like, Wish You Were the Whiskey very much feels like a Jason Aldean or like Brantley Gilbert song to me.
Now I'm drunk like a fireball, light me up.
And I do think that there is something interesting about that. In general, the production is my issue. I feel like it's your standard booming percussion tracks trying to distract a listener that's in their car with a big drop. And I don't know, I listen to music in a different kind of setting than that, and those songs feel so synthetic to me, even if I understand why they capture someone's attention that's just casually listening. I'm really resonating with what is, I see right here on Spotify, the least streamed track on the album, which is called Sad Girls Do Sad Things. Are any of us shocked? Sad Boy Central over here, Sad Boy Summer coming up. But this song's really pretty. It shows off her voice. It's really kind of, I think, vulnerable as a lyric, where she's talking about sort of her worst tendencies when she's sad. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this EP, but I really just feel like Priscilla is going to take off. I think her songwriting style is in some ways wildly simple. Probably too simple for a lyric nerd like me to hear a song called The Bad Part of Good. You know, I'd want to hear the melancholy part of Euphoria. You know, that I like flowery purple prose like that. But I think there's something very relatable, simple about her writing style and delivery, and we'll see where it goes. Justin Moore has a new album called Straight Outta the Country.
Putting that bacon on my stove, dog barking in the yard at a truck we don't know.
Gotta say off the bat, I hate this cover. I think it looks janky. It's just like on a snakeskin boot, I guess, and referencing Straight Outta Compton. I think that cover, to be totally honest, has almost dissuaded me from listening more to this album. Like, I just haven't felt that curiosity I usually feel about a Justin Moore record, which is weird because I was so pumped about Late Nights and Long Necks, but this one just feels like there to me. The songs on it all sound great. I really like what Justin Moore has done with his sound and how he has amended it, and it feels really instrumental, it feels robust, his voice is on display, but as an album, this just feels kind of unfocused to me at the same time. Also, is it an album? Like, is it an EP? Is it an album? It's 7 songs. Someone said on the subreddit that all albums right now are either double albums or they're like 7 songs, like Carly Pearce's 29, and I very much agree. But it's hard for me to really understand what Straight Outta the Country has to do with We Didn't Have Much, and what that has to do with You Keep Getting Me Drunk or something like that, you know? I think all these songs are better on their own than they are as a collection, because as a collection, this just kind of feels there to me, like a little less than the sum of its parts, even if it sounds really good. So I don't know, do y'all feel the same way? Just like a total lack of excitement on my part, which I don't really understand. Kenny Chesney released a deluxe version of Here and Now that added 4 more songs to it. I think generally they fit well with the themes of Here and Now. I'll just shout out my favorite is a song called Streets.
And on the streets of Nashville.
It's a co-write with Tom Douglas, and I think Tom Douglas is so good at reflecting on America as he did on Maddie Poppy's Nothing Good Comes Out of California. This song kind of walks you through a setting of streets in New York, and then in LA, and then in Nashville, and then in America at large. And there's all these little cool details where it talks about, in New York, Piano Man's holding court at the Garden, which is referencing Billy Joel, who often plays at Madison Square Garden. And whether you're on the streets of New York and hearing the bells in the cathedral, or you're in the City of Angels in LA, or whether there's just some gal playing a Willie Nelson song in Nashville, there's this refrain of all is well. Like on all these different streets, all is well. It's just a unique, kind of hard to understand, really beautiful song. And those are some of my favorite Kenny Chesney songs. Stuff like Gulf Moon, where it's just observing your surroundings and being like, this is who we are as people. Luke Bryan also released a deluxe version of Born Here, Live Here, Die Here that added some more tracks onto that album. Again, I think these fit pretty well with the album, much like Kenny Chesney's did. They kind of continue that theme of reflecting on being from the country. I think that's on a lot of country stars' minds in this pandemic year. And you got the song called Bill Dance about wishing you were a fisherman named Bill Dance, who I was unfamiliar with till I heard that song. But my favorite of these is called Floatin' This Creek.
Floating this creek.
I think just because the vibe of it, it's a fairly simple lyric about kind of imagining a perfect day, but just that beautiful acoustic guitar work and the little harmonica that gives it a slight bluegrass feel. It's really different for Luke Bryan, really casual and lovely. Although the other 2 songs that were released, Waves and Up, I think are probably the bigger crowd pleasers just in terms of being easy to sing along with, nice melodies. So that's it for me. I feel like I just filmed for a million years. I don't know how to not do that or stop doing that. I feel like I need a producer or something to, you know, like format my life so that I don't end up shooting for 2 hours, which is what I just did. Hopefully we can winnow this down. Reviews are stressful, but I always feel great once they're out there in the world. So that's it. Bye.